I want to thank you for joining me, taking time out of your busy schedule to join me. I am with Digital and Radio Facts. This is my third week with the online magazine. And so this interview is for its 25th anniversary issue. And the theme is celebrating Black culture. And so we wanted to speak to you about your journey from YouTube, being in your bedroom, your Bronx bedroom, telling Gary Sheffield that he needs to retire, and building your brand from there with your huge YouTube following. And so you're just an inspiration for people who, especially like right now during the pandemic when people are home, they have a lot of ideas. And I just want them to see someone who has taken their ideas and worked hard on these dreams and made these dreams a reality. So now you have your national radio show. And so I just want to thank you for joining us and taking time to share your story with me.
No, not a problem. Piece of cake.
All right. So tell me about the transition from YouTube to now having your radio show.
I want to say it's not a big transition. Obviously, there are things that you get used to when you do something new or different. It's much different from going from a YouTube video where I'd go anywhere from 10 to 8 minutes to, doing a national show per night where there are 40 minutes to fill per hour. But the premise for me hasn't changed. When I started on YouTube, it was always about, this is what I think. What do you, the viewers, think as well? And nowadays on a radio show, it really isn't that different. I mean, I pretty much take the same formula. I just spread it out. I have more time if you want to look at it that way. I take what was a YouTube monologue of me talking just straight into a camera, for let's say 5 to 8 minutes. And now I've stretched that into potentially 15 minutes, allowing me more time to put in facts, not necessarily rush my opinion. And then I open up the phone lines and, I talk to folks. I look at the tweets that come in. People message me on Facebook and Instagram while I'm on air. So in that regard, it really isn't different, because I would post a YouTube video and, it'd go up and automatically there'd be tons of comments. People would have their opinion. And now it's just a little bit different in regards to timing. So in the big scheme of things, it's really not all that different. The formula is pretty much the same in how I approach it.
Okay, great. Now, are you still doing the JR Sports Brief YouTube shows, or are you just concentrating on your radio show?
Not as frequently as I'd like, especially right now with the pandemic. I had a big plan to keep going with my YouTube. It's crazy to think that I started it in 2009, and here we are in 2020. It really feels like yesterday. I can remember coming home and walking into the house and setting up the shoebox and everything to do it. It literally feels like yesterday. So no, I once everything gets rolling and we can get back to a sense of normalcy, there's going to be a lot of marriage between what I do on air and then what I do on my YouTube channel. So not as frequently. I used to pump out a YouTube video every single day. I had it programmed out Sunday through pretty much Saturday. Sunday I used to have a segment called JR Wisdom. Wednesday, Thursday, I would do a top 6 video kind of listing down. I'm happy I was able to take that to radio. Okay. Friday, I would do Fan Friday, just really incorporate viewer comments directly into the videos. And Saturdays were always big because for the most part, there was always a big boxing match or a UFC fight or playoff game. Saturdays were big too when it came down to like marquee sporting events. So I look forward to eventually getting back to that and making more content on a normal basis.
Okay, great. And I know some people are saying that radio, it's a dying form of media. Do you agree with that statement?
No, not at all. It's like everything that's come throughout life. I mean, there was a point in time where TV came on the scene and people were saying, "Oh, radio's done." TV right. TV is a wrap. There was a point in time where radio came on the scene and people looked at newspapers and said, "Oh, well, newspapers, they're pretty much a wrap." And, things change. Newspapers aren't a wrap today, but they certainly have changed. You can walk through New York City. I remember walking through New York City in the late 80s and 90s, and you couldn't walk 2 feet without seeing a newspaper and a candy shop stand. You don't see those newspaper stands anymore because it's all right here in your hand. So things change, and so radio has changed. I mean, the elements of it has changed. Obviously, we have podcasts now, but radio still has a community element to it. And radio, albeit like a lot of industries, can be slow to change. They need to kind of get pushed and nudged until somebody comes along and says, you need to hurry up or we take your spot. But I think radio is starting to take steps to move into more digital media. And whereas media is just media as opposed to I just do TV or I just do radio, you got to be kind of versed in all elements. So I don't think radio is dead, but like everything else, it has to change, and it has.
Okay, all right. And so, based on what I've seen, and I watched some of your sports briefs, and I read some articles about you, and I also read some of your articles from the CBS Sports Radio. So you're very diverse. And so how important is it to diversify your skill set in today's market?
It's very important. And, I don't think it's something a lot of people can do. And I'm being honest. It's not to pat myself on the back, but I've had varying life experiences. I've been all over the world. I have just been hanging out with billionaires and millionaires in their houses, and I have hung out with families in India who live in the slums. And so, I have varying experiences. I don't have a one-way street or one-way look at life. And I try to, in every opinion that I form, I try to look at everything, and I try to rely on all scopes of experience. So, these things are very diverse. I think it's an advantage right now, especially if in media, if you can come with additional experiences. For myself, it's been a boom. I can relate to chatting it up with a professional athlete as well as I can sit and relate to talking to a marketing executive or chat it up with a business owner. I mean, there's so many different areas, and that's one thing coming up from YouTube, not a traditional space. I didn't get on radio or TV just via tradition. I didn't go to Syracuse. I didn't go fill in the blank school to study journalism. I kind of went through the hard knocks life experience part. So I didn't go from school, internship, small market, medium market, big market, on air. I went from digital, podcasting, TV. I had hands-on experience, and along the way, I was forced at a very young age to learn production, learn how to edit, learn camera work, learn how to put together a marketing and a business plan, learn finance, hang out with agencies, learn advertising, learn PR, learn the nuts and bolts, learn how to be on air. I can easily sit down and produce content just as much as I can sit and speak on camera. So being diverse and knowing and understanding multiple things is always a help for anybody. Not everybody gets that chance or opportunity. Not everybody is comfortable with it, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Is this what you always wanted to do, or your love for sports and just talking about different topics just kind of led you to this career?
I would say kind of led. I talked to friends from like 15 years ago I have a friend who told me, hey, this is what you said you wanted to do in high school. So I guess that's true. But I just really enjoy creating content. I like coming up with ideas. I'm not, and this is a creative space. I don't sit down and paint portraits and sell them, but it's pretty much, I look at everything that I do as storytelling. And I think that's a different aspect as well on how I approach content and radio, especially what I do in sports radio. We have folks who I feel will just talk and talk and talk and talk and fill space, but not necessarily have an end to what they're saying. I want someone who's going to listen to me on the radio. It doesn't matter at what point you come in. It's like a good movie. If you're flipping through the channels or Netflix or whatever, the trailer is what catches your attention. Even if you don't have any interest in it, I want someone who's not a sports fan to be able to listen to what I'm saying, regardless of where they're coming in, and just go, what's going on? And just be able to let me walk you through, kind of what the story is. And that's kind of approach I take on that. But I just always, I like being creative and coming up with ideas. So sports is one of the things that I really love, like, and enjoy. And it's something I decided to turn into a career and then also a business.
Okay, great. And so I know with the reading about you, building community is important to you, and being able to touch and reach out to your fans is important to you. Your tagline is sports opinions by a fan for fans. And so with everything that's happening right now, the pandemic, the protests, just fighting to matter as Black people and fighting for equal rights, and there are still your avid sports fans who are craving sports. So how do you navigate giving your avid sports fans that sports while still using your platform to address some of the important issues that are facing us?
It's real simple. You tell the truth. And it's not whose truth it is. I mean, it's unfortunate that we live in a space and a time where people are so combative about things that tend to be common sense, and people are so defensive about, simple things like, okay, whether or not I should put on a mask. I get it. I don't like wearing a mask. I hate wearing the mask, but I don't see a reason in its simplest form of why I can't. And it's a simple reminder, when I'm in a closed space or I walk by an elderly person, and it's just like, okay, this is why I wear it. Or when I have to think about whether or not, I want to go visit someone, whether it's a parent or a grandparent or a family member, and it's just like, okay, this is why. And things become real simple. So it doesn't matter if it matters about health. It doesn't matter if it matters about race in America. And this is where perspective, comes. Black folks and minorities, people of color, whatever you want to call them, have to assimilate into the United States of America. The majority of white people who live in the United States of America, they don't assimilate into Black culture. They don't assimilate into Latino culture. They don't assimilate into Asian culture. They simply are here. They don't switch over. So there is no understanding. And so to have people say, look, things aren't even, and to have people be defensive about it without educating themselves or really taking a big picture look, all I can do is tell the truth. Not my truth, not your truth as you see it, just the facts of what has happened and what has occurred. So that's the approach I take every night. And it's not easy. It's not simple. Nobody wants to sit down and doom and gloom themselves for 4 hours every single weeknight. A big part of it is to take the temperature and see what is necessary, what isn't necessary, how you can present something, when you present something. There's a lot to it.
Okay. I'm gonna take a turn for just a minute. So sure. This is like a sports question. Now, I'm a sports fanatic as well. So, there's been a few people, and this has to do with sports coming back and COVID. So I just want your opinion. There's been the nose guard for the Bears. He opted out. Dante opted out for the Patriots.
Yes.
And there's baseball players opting out. We had the Marlins who had I forgot how many players just tested positive. How do you feel about sports returning when we have this pandemic? And, people can only be so safe. It seems to be working okay in the bubble for the NBA, but the bubble didn't sell to other teams or to other sports. So how do you feel about sports returning amid this pandemic?
I love sports. Obviously, I get paid to talk about sports, but sports ain't a necessity. Sports is not necessary. I can listen. A few minutes ago, I just listened to a sports broadcast on the radio say, I need sports. Sports are necessary. Okay, fine. This is something that you've done your life as a sports fan. You need sports because it occupies your time. It occupies your space. It gives you something to do. Humans aren't sedentary. We're not built to just sit in a solid space. We're built for movement. We're built to be active. Which is why we can date back to just people watching folks wrestling on the ground. Like this is what we do. So I can understand the need for it. But when you have everything that's going on right now, it's not necessary. Now, having said that, I understand it's big business. You know, not everybody is walking around with just $1 billion business wrapped around their neck. Not everybody just says, "Hey, yeah, I'll lose, $3-4 billion. Why not lose another five?" It doesn't work that way, and it's the same thing for millionaires. So, look, if the billionaires and the millionaires come to an agreement to go out and play, more power to them. People get what they want, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to question just the viability of having it. Major League Baseball is basically writing the plan as they go along, and it's not because they love baseball. It's because the players love the game and want to get paid. It's because the owners have whatever agenda they want to fill when it comes down to their bottom line. They want to get to the playoffs. They want to get to the TV money. The NFL is the same. Like, why are we going to wipe out? Okay, we lost $5 billion because we won't have fans in the stands. Why do we want to wipe out another five? Yeah, that's what it boils down to. If I'm a player, we got some players out here who are close to $1 million. We have some who can make 16 and 20 a year. And if you're already taking a loss, how much of a loss do you want? We got people who are getting up to go to work, and it's just like, well, I don't want to go to work, but I got to get money.
Right.
So money makes the world go round. And in that regard, I can certainly understand sports moving forward. If I was a commissioner, I'd be an advocate for sports going forward. But, in that regard, it doesn't have that much of a direct impact on me, even for someone who gets paid to talk about sports every day.
And I guess this would be, with what's happening, it goes along with what you're saying, how important it is to have diversity, to have diverse thoughts, because there has been so long where all people have been able to talk about it. Is it coming back? Will it come back? Is it safe to come back? But with you being such a diverse person and you talk to so many people, you're able to bring different experiences and talk about just about everything. So that is another point, I guess, against making sure that you stay diversified in this market. And so when you built your brand, I read about how you had some help from some people, family, friends, and you built relationships. How do you tell people how to build relationships and then cultivate them into partnerships when you have this dream, and we all need help to make our dreams a reality? So when you're talking and meeting with people, what do you tell them about building and cultivating relationships and turning them into partnerships?
That's cool, because people ask me like all the time, and it's not necessarily that direct of a question, but I'll have folks who will Instagram me and say, "Hey, I just started my YouTube channel. Can you tell people to come follow me?" Or I'll have people who will message me and ask me for advice. And it's all good and well. I reached a point where I want to help just personally. I want to help as many people as I can. But if you're not built out for it, if you're not committed to it, then it doesn't matter. At the basis of anybody starting anything, like, you have to do the work. You have to do the research. You have to plan out. You have to go ahead and be committed to it. If you don't have that same commitment level, why should anybody else be interested in investing in you? It doesn't matter if it's time. It doesn't matter if it's money. It doesn't matter if it's experience. You want to tap into somebody else. Why should I bother? So when I started my YouTube channel, the world is a much different place right now. I didn't have to worry about Instagram and Facebook. It was like, I got YouTube. Like, I didn't even have a Twitter account when I started on YouTube, because Twitter was there, but it wasn't all that what it is today, where you got presidents and brands and it's necessary to communicate. And I would post a video on YouTube, and if I made a video about the Yankees, the Knicks, the Jets, the Lakers, the Cowboys, I would then take the time to go and identify fans of those teams and just try to become a part of their community. So if by just noticing or seeing me, they go, "Who is this guy?" and they come and check me out. And that was work. And that's how I initially built a community on YouTube. And YouTube is much different than it is today. A lot of it is built on algorithm and science and behind the scenes. But there was more editorial involvement when I started on YouTube. So, you know, I had an editor on YouTube who realized, hey, all we have for sports is literally, you know, rights deals with leagues. And I don't even think every league had a rights deal or a YouTube channel. Yeah, I think the NFL was one of the last holdouts to even put content on YouTube, but there wasn't commentary like radio on YouTube at the time. And so I put myself on YouTube, and then Fred Seibert, who used to run Hanna-Barbera, he basically started like a production company just for YouTube. And it was about a year until it's like a record label. Like I had to put in the work for a year, and then I signed with him, and then I got more of the support that I wouldn't necessarily have gotten from the marketing. You know, when I went to Next New Networks, that was the name of the company. That's when I was like, one day I was on the cover of iTunes for like a whole day. And I mean, these are like small victories that are difficult to achieve by yourself. But at the end of the day, you can have help and you can have support, but you got to do the work. Because if you're not committed to the work, why should anybody else care?
Very true. Very true. And so it seems that you have a lot of freedom to format your show and format everything. Do you have any influences or confidants that you reach out to bounce some of your ideas off of before you create your show? Or do you just really go with your ideas, your thoughts, and because it's your show? So, or do you reach out to other people? How do you do that?
Pretty much. I mean, I have a solid producer that I work with. His name is Stu Kovacs, and Stu is awesome. It's great to work with someone, even though it's been a few months. You know, it's like we're already in sync in regards to thoughts and the news. Like I like to know what's going on. Sometimes I have to tone it down in regards to how much information or what I take in or what I consume. But ultimately, I've been doing this for so long. Like I always want and am open to people's opinions and their thoughts. But ultimately, I'm so used to structuring everything out and thinking about the different scenarios and how this can go or what the reaction is going to be from here. I always pretty much have a framework of everything that I read. I probably at this point, it's just automatic. I go, okay, how would this be received? How would someone think about this? So a lot of the ideas and the structure of it is just straight from my brain.
Okay. All right, great. You're doing very well with it. So I want to tell you that. I like what I've watched when I watched your YouTube videos and when I've listened to what you've done on CBS Sports Radio. So you've done a great job. I just wanted to let you know that.
There's 1,000 videos. There's maybe 1,100 videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
There's a lot to catch up on.
Yes, there is. There really is. And I like how you are a fan talking to fans. And sometimes, as you know, if you listen to sports radio, sometimes some sportscasters, some people hosts on sports radio can kind of talk down to fans.
Sure.
They don't really agree with their opinion. So I like that you don't do that, and that you are here for the fans, and I think fans appreciate that as well when they're listening.
No, thank you. No, that's the whole point, because this is a medium that obviously I've grown up watching and seeing, and it doesn't matter if you're listening on the radio or you're watching on TV. Sports is a space where it is so opinion based that you get into. It's like walking into the barbershop. And I can't tell you how many times growing up on a week-to-week basis, you walk into the barbershop. And a lot of times, even when I got into what I'm doing over the past bunch of years, you know, I stay out of it. Like, I'm more interested in hearing what's going on, because I don't ever want to pull a trump card and say, well, I actually spoke to so-and-so 2 weeks ago. Or let me go ahead and call up so-and-so right now. But it gets to a point, barbershop radio, people can be so opinionated that it's just like, hey, what I think is law and what you think is beneath me. And I don't believe in that. Like, I will call, if someone calls me up on a radio show and they say something that's totally out of this world, then I have a reputation of being sarcastic. I have a reputation of being straightforward and crass. and I will certainly do that and use that. But I try to stay just as straight as possible. I don't try to go off on a limb to make a point. I don't try to just, rope somebody in or destroy them for if they have a view, unless it is totally out of left field and is just blatantly in a different space.
Okay. And along that note, is there a topic or an athlete or a person that you will not allow any slander, whether it is correct or not? You know how when they say people stand for LeBron or you stand for Michael Jordan. I'm from Chicago, so there will be no Michael Jordan slander. That's just me. But even if you might be telling me the truth, but do you have, this is just a fun question for you. Do you have any topic for anybody that you will not allow that slander against them?
Any athlete who stands up for other human beings.
Okay.
We have a big segment of sports fans who will only want to consume athletes when they play, and they discount the fact that they're human beings. So I think it's very unfortunate, that people can personally be offended, and it's well within their right, but I don't agree with it. If Colin Kaepernick kneels, or a LeBron James wants to make a statement about Breonna Taylor, or we have a player who takes the knee. I had on weekends, I'm in New York City, and I just started back on WFAN, and I had a caller call up and say, oh, well, how can you say that about this player who's turned his back on his country and this and that? And it's just like, that, to me, that's a lot of hyperbole, and it's a lot of ignoring the actual issues that are there. And it's just like, how much time do you have? Because it's very easy to make a 2-minute, 1 minute, 5-minute statement on the radio about an athlete, but how much time do you have? I can't give you the history lesson, even in my 20-minute break, for why everything you're saying is kind of wrong and disrespectful. So it's not so much that there's someone who's untouchable. Let's face it, no human being is perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. I try my best to not judge the athletes on anything they do in their personal lives unless it affects the general public. Somebody racing down the highway at 150 miles per hour, someone who wants to get into an issue of domestic violence or any type of violence, unless this is something that has a general effect on society. I don't care what anybody does in their house. I don't care what anybody's personal thoughts or opinions are, as long as you're not harming anybody else. But in a general sense, everybody's up for it, in my opinion. Okay. Everybody.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So what do you want your legacy to be in this industry?
For myself, it's just continuing to provide opportunity for others. I understand how difficult this space is to get into, even now. I feel like an outlier in certain instances because there aren't a lot of folks who have come off of YouTube. I mean, that's the reality. And we have a lot of folks who, whether it be on website platforms or Twitter or Instagram, but there's still a lot of folks in the sports industry who have no voice. It's especially when you're African American. It's just like, hey, when you want to get into media, you can be a host, and we can only have a few of those. Or you can be a former athlete. And it's like a lot of our former athletes, that's been a formula. Let's take a former athlete, let's tie them up with an analyst or pundit, and boom, there is the show. And so over time, there hasn't been a lot of space for folks like me, whose furthest athletic achievement stopped in high school when it's just said, my knees hurt, I ain't playing nothing no more. It's over. So for me, there are a lot of athletes that I know. There are a lot of journalists that I know. There are a lot of personalities that I know that I want to take what I've been given and allow them an opportunity as well. So ultimately, I want to continue everything that I'm doing talent-wise, but then also be able to go to a lot of friends, whether they're athletes or journalists or people who want to break into the business and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. I understand you have this idea. Let me help you cultivate that. So I operate two-pronged. I don't run around talking about it. but I have a business and a production company, and there's quite a few projects I'm getting ready to kind of lay out that don't have me as the centerpiece and face. But I'm really looking forward to that, because for me, what's legacy is what you leave behind. And you know, I can't take everything that I've done with me into the ground. And there's so many people that you interact with. The best thing you can do is just try to be a decent human being and kind of share what you know, just to make somebody else's life a little bit easier. That's it.
All right. And you kind of answered this, but my final question for you is, what's next for you? You have your radio show. What's next for JR?
Well, just everything talent. So continuing to do radio and TV. It's good to have an opinion. It's good to have a different perspective and try to share something that I don't think is necessarily out there in the market. And then on the other hand, kind of what I said, just allowing and sharing some other opportunities for other people to go out and make some noise and make their mark as well.